So you can imagine converting this forest and its associated wetlands into a housing development that you may, even if you have plans to retain wetlands, at least on a map, you would lose much of their function. So you'd have local impacts, and those would be severe.
Every drop is important. And if we removed 1/3 of it that was coming from springs, which are your most constant supplier, we could dry that up not into a wetland and a marsh, but into, from the animal's perspective, a desert.
If you look at a landscape, regional landscape, and the landscape would be, this area and then all the parks in the surrounding area, one thing you want to pay attention to is the potential of that landscape to support a network of populations. So in all likelihood, if you develop this place, we're going to lose species perhaps in Seaholm Hill, in Connolly Creek Natural Area, along Padden Creek, and many of the other parks and protected areas in this region. And so this site occupies a position on the landscape that is of great strategic importance. It essentially provides a link between the large areas of the Chuckanuts to the south and the parks and natural areas that the city has wisely protected to the northeast and west. Essentially, if you think of the concept of a keystone, where you pull out the keystone and the whole structure falls, well, that appears to be what this place is functioning as. If you don't care about those species, but you want to be able to get home on time, then you should also be concerned about this place, because the additional traffic that a place like this generates is going to impact your life wherever you live in town. That traffic is going to affect the north end of town, it's going to affect the east end of town, it's going to affect more than just the immediate arterials that would feed this place. We've seen this in other places, and I hope that we're smart enough and that we're active enough not to repeat the mistakes that have been made elsewhere.
I worry about the floods that occur when we strip the lands and remove the trees and the root systems that hold back the water and the vegetation here.
But where the water lies and where the rock layers are and where the aquifers are should be a concern before they put any money into it. And when they cut enough trees to put that many houses, that's going to just make the water pour down here.
In the condition that you see it here, with lots of vegetation, loose soil material, perhaps 80% of all the water that falls in this surface never makes it out in terms of runoff. However, if you put condominiums and roadways and everything that goes with a large development, probably 80% would come out. So you've got 4 times more runoff after than you did before. The question is, what are you going to do with that downstream? Because there is a lot of loose material in this slope and virtually no bedrock that I can see, we've got the problem of sedimentation. And especially during the construction phase, you can get sediment yields of hundreds of tons per acre. And where are those hundreds of tons per acre going to go? But downslope, and in this case it's going to be downslope right into the ponds, which classify, I'm sure, as Class 1 wetlands. It's going to fundamentally change the character of the area down below the slope. I would perceive that it could be entirely filled in during the construction phase in this slope.
Simply during the construction phase.
Right. And to the extent that you can't control it and you can't protect the wetlands down below, it becomes an impossible proposition for a developer.
I don't know of any way to put a road here, a 2-lane road or a 4-lane road, and handle the flow that is interrupted, the springs that exist along this road, the surface water flowing on. I don't know any way, and I don't think anybody else does, within any economically justifiable means, to keep this pond and wetland alive while still handling the downhill subsurface flow of water and the springs that exist here.
If this project were to occur, and if it were to include anywhere near the number of units proposed, then the road would have to be constructed.
Is it possible that there was a mistake made in allowing this amount of density on this property?
The density may have been too high for that site. And part of the reason for that, part of the rationale for that was that it was recognized that the new arterial road through the property was likely to be a significant expense. and that expense would probably have to be borne to a large extent by the developer of the property.
That the zoning for Chuckanut Ridge was never rationally determined or properly applied. In 1978, it was zoned thoughtfully and properly 20,000 square foot per unit. In 1980, mysteriously, without a planning commission hearing, without consideration, recommendation, staff reports, recommendations, council, no public notice, no public process, no public record. It was zoned 3,000 square foot per unit. We mustered a campaign to stop the last development. We mustered a campaign to float a levy. We taxed ourselves to buy that property, and it never happened. Now it is going to cost the citizens of Bellingham millions and millions and millions of dollars more, whether it's developed or not.
We sat down with the bank, and on Wednesday and Thursday we had some very serious discussions with them. But what they've agreed to is to give us the opportunity to buy this piece of property and put it into public ownership. It is not a done deal, and it's a long ways from a done deal.
As you know, our Hulami Estelnoch had utilized this area for time immemorial. The concerns that we have here at Lummi is impacts to natural resources as well as cultural, archaeological resources. They're a footprint of our ancestors. I'm here as an echo for my elders.
Having hiked the trail several times, I have found little bits of what life truly is about. Once the coo of the owl is gone, the smell of pine has vanished, and the growth of the forest has been destroyed. What palace is going to bring our superficial mindset back to the true meaning of life?
It's so serious because it's about our neighborhoods, it's about our homes, it's about our families. That's why it's so passionate. We all have to rise to the occasion and pass whatever we need to pass to buy these special places, and I believe we can.
We just moved here from Los Angeles. We know that if you don't stop them now, it's going to get worse and worse. And if you stop them now, you'll have what LA lacks, a decent environment.
When I was pregnant with him, we were walking there. He's been in those woods since he was born. And it's just the most peaceful, meditative place to go walking in Bellingham.
Well, I think it is pretty straightforward. I think the whole business of the planning process in Bellingham is deeply flawed.
This is a bad development. It's not good for the bank, it's not good for the community, and it's certainly not good for posterity, because this is a treasured piece of property that is of interest, actually, to some of the people at Huxley College at Western Washington University.
There should not be any building in there. And people that want to build there appear to be doing it only for their economic gratification and never mind what happens to the populace.
Well, I've enjoyed doing business with Horizon Bank. I have money there right now, our whole family does, but I can't keep my money there if this is the kind of project they're going to fund. We'll remove it and we'll encourage others to do so also.
In a very long-term perspective, 20 or 30 or 40 years down the road, it may be that the effort needed to acquire the property or to pursue lesser impact alternatives would be insignificant compared to the future value of the property. And you know, in economic terms, we refer to those values as values of bequest or legacy. There can be essentially dimensionless values.
Clark's Point is a large natural area bordering the bay south of town. We spoke with members of the Clark family who own Clark's Point and who have voluntarily chosen to save their land by giving up the development rights and putting their property into a land trust.
I really wanted to preserve the trees and have it be a place for the wildlife. And the deer, raccoons, fox. What's really wonderful is that within this last year, we found an eagle's nest on the point.
At least it preserves the natural beauty, and that seemed to be what we wanted.
And the idea of having this land be preserved for perpetuity really pleases me a lot.
We got the power to develop, we got the power to preserve. We choose to do the preservation. And I'm real happy we decided to do that.